Hi, everyone. My name's Jordyn. I am a case manager here at Northwest Surrogacy Center, and it's super exciting to be able to host this webinar for all of you and with Sarah. How's it going, Sarah?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Perfect. So before we get started, I'll give you a little bit of an idea of what we're going to do. I'm going to have Sarah talk a little bit about her journey from all the way from the beginning and thoughts about being a surrogate through delivery. And then we'll open it up for question and answers. If you kind of hover over the screen and on the bottom, you'll see a little Q&A bubble. If you click on that, it'll allow you to type in your questions. Feel free to type them in at any time and they'll kind of keep storing for us to get to after Sarah talks for about 20 to 30 minutes. Perfect. All right, Sarah, are you ready?
Yeah, I hope I don't leave anything out. This whole journey started so long ago. So
Yeah,
definitely let me know if I've missed anything.
of course.
It was probably about 4 years ago when I really started looking into surrogacy. I'd actually just had my own third child. And when he was a few months old, I told my husband, hey, I really want to be a surrogate. And obviously he thought I was crazy. We had this new baby and he said, no, it's weird. Like we have our own kids. You don't need to do it. But I just kind of kept pursuing it. And every once in a while I'd be like, hey, I love being pregnant. It's really easy. I really want to help someone out. And he still wasn't so sure about it. He hadn't done any research. And then someone he worked with, their wife actually became a surrogate with Northwest. So that kind of got him on board to actually just learn a little more. So I got online and I filled out the entire questionnaire, which was really easy, really straightforward. One of the most user-friendly websites I've probably used. And within a few days of filling out that initial questionnaire, I got a call from someone at the company. And they just kind of talked with me a little bit about everything, asked me a few more questions, and then we set up the in-person, I don't want to say interview, but just kind of like a meet and greet, go over everything. So we drove up to Portland and the meeting was probably like an hour long. And after that, my husband was 100% on board. Like it was
Yay.
extremely, yeah, I know. I was like, yay, finally. Um, it just was so thorough and everyone was so friendly and so welcoming. And he really learned that as a surrogate, you're completely protected. You're not forced into anything. You get to make every choice you want to for yourself. It's not like, hey, here's a couple that wants a baby. Like this is who it is. Like everything, is really tailored to both people. It's tailored to the intended parents and the surrogate as well. And so then after that, he was like, yeah, like let's do this. This will be great. And at that point, I was still nursing my last son. And so, I was super honest and everyone was really upfront. And I said, I really want to do this. I would love to get the process going, but I want to finish nursing my own son. And I didn't want to cut that short to become a surrogate. And everyone was like, cool, that's fine. That's great. Which I was shocked. I thought I'd be pressured to be like, hey, come on, like, let's get the ball rolling. Like, you don't need to nurse them that long. So from the time of that initial meet and greet to actually getting the ball rolling was probably another 8 or 9 months. Like it
Oh,
was a
wow.
while.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I wanted to just nurse until I felt like my son was ready. I didn't want to put a timeline on weaning. And so when we finally did, um, we did do all the medical records and everything
So you
while
got
I was
all the medical records and the
mhm.
done in the meantime,
Yeah,
which is kind of nice.
yeah, so that was really easy. Northwest sent me, I had Krista, right?
Krista, yeah.
Krista. Yeah, Krista, as my lady helping me through all of that. And she was super helpful, really quick to reply with everything. Anytime I had a question, it was like a half an hour and she had an answer. So I did do the medical records and got the approval for all of that while I was still nursing. And then once I finished with that, then we went forward with all the steps as far as scheduling the psych evaluation and doing the home visit. Uh, and so I was super anxious. Like once I was done nursing, I was so excited. I love being pregnant and I really wanted to help someone. Which brings me to why I chose to do it. Like I said, I loved being pregnant. It's super easy for me and I actually enjoy it, as weird as that might sound to some people. Um, and unfortunately, we have a few friends who have really struggled for a while in trying to become pregnant. And after watching them go through it and seeing how hard it is for some people, um, that's really what finally pushed me to like, hey, I really want to do this. I want to help someone out. It's like probably the best thing you could ever do for someone. Like it's a gift
Yeah.
that not everybody can give. And I had always kind of played with the idea of being a foster parent, but it wasn't really the right situation for our family to do that. So surrogacy was another way I could help another family, achieve their dream, and
Yeah.
helping my family out as well. So that's why I chose to do it. And then the fun part came of kind of, getting matched
Yeah.
with someone. And it's funny
Well,
because it's,
go ahead. I was gonna ask you what it was like when you saw their profile or their bio for the first time.
yeah, which I was like really anxious about that because it's almost like people ask how you get matched. And it's almost like a dating website, I guess you would say, like, because I have a profile as a surrogate and it's all about like me and my family and our interests. And then the parents, the intended parents, have their own profile. So I always tell people it's like dating. Like you both get to look at each other's profile, you get to read about it. Um, and at first I was like, okay, these people sounds cool. It's really hard though to judge someone off of a piece of paper, but theirs was super long. It was super thorough. So I got a really good feel for them. And that when I was like, okay, let's go ahead. Like, let's talk with this couple. I really want to, get to know them better. So that's when we did our kind of meet and greet and meet the couple.
Yeah, we call that a match meeting. Yeah, officially a match meeting. And so that's also where we first started to meet each other, is at the profile exchange, which is seems so long ago already.
I know, yeah.
What was the match meeting like from your perspective, looking back on it now?
Awkward. I mean, it wasn't like awkward at the time because you were there to help and, you asked the questions and both parties got a chance to answer. But, like if you really get down to the nitty gritty, it's like, here's these perfect strangers I'm potentially going to have a baby for. So while we were talking, it was fine. But after we ended the match meeting, I was like, wow, Ryan, like that's really weird. Like I could have a baby for these people and we don't even know them. But they seemed really nice. And I mean, everyone deserves a kid, but it's somebody that I wanted to help. Like I felt like they deserved for me to help them have a baby and make a family for them.
Yeah.
Um, and I saw that question. Should I answer the question about the home visit?
We can get to that at the end.
Okay. Okay. Um, yeah, so that's really when I guess the ball started rolling, is after the match meeting. Um, we, both of us decided to match with each other, but at the time you didn't know. So Ryan and I talked about it for a day or so, and we're like, okay, is this the couple? And I really wanted to be 100% sure. Um, and it was nice that one of my friends had been a surrogate before, so she could kind of give me pointers on like, hey, this is some advice. This is what I wish I did different. And she just always told me like, make sure you feel 100% comfortable with the couple you're choosing. If I didn't want to go with them, like there's other surrogates they could be matched with. So you shouldn't like agree to be someone's surrogate just because you feel bad. But after Ryan and I talked, like we felt really comfortable with them. And so it was really exciting a few days later to learn they wanted me to be their surrogate as well, that we both chose each other, which is a big part of the process I like. I like that you're not just stuck with a couple. Like we both get to choose each other. And I think that's really important, that both parties want to do this with the other party. Um, and so from there, let's see what happens after that.
There's
There's
a
so much.
yeah. There is a lot that happens. We do the contract part, the legal part,
Right.
and then also you did your medical screening at the same time. So
Right. Yeah. And the contract part's not the fun part at all. It's just like awkward legal stuff. And
but you
so
had
we got,
a lawyer to help you with that process.
we do. So we have a lawyer, which is really nice. Like I don't have to research anything or try to figure out like, oh God, what's in my best interest. They have their own lawyer. I had my own lawyer. And my lawyer was really great. Like everything was pretty straightforward. She gave me some pointers on like, hey, we should add this to the contract, or we would maybe want to change that, like things that I wouldn't think of. But I was so happy she mentioned. Like I really felt like she had my best interest at heart, which I guess is your lawyer. Like that's their job. But it didn't feel like, okay, you're just another customer coming along. Like it was really tailored to me and what was best for me and my family and my kids. which is really nice. I mean, obviously, surrogates go into this to help another family and other people, but it is really important to make sure that I'm like personally taken care of and covered, and that in any situation that could possibly happen, that
Yeah.
it'll be taken care of. Which brings me up to like COVID, you know, all these things that are in your contract, you think, well, that would never happen. Because it goes into like, well, what if the parents weren't able to make it to the delivery, if they weren't there, if they died, like all this stuff where you're like, oh, that would never happen. I'm not worried about it. Well, COVID did happen. Like the pandemic did happen. And they're right up until delivery, like the parents were not going to be allowed to be there. So I was really glad we had all of that in writing. It was a game plan. It was legally done. Um, both parties were going to get what they want in that sort of situation. So I would definitely advise just take the contract seriously and don't feel bad about going back and forth. You know, you can suggest something. The IPs, the intended parents, could say yes or no to it. Just make sure you're, you know, getting what you want. And at that point, if you're not feeling comfortable, you can still back out. So that was very reassuring too. So after we got all that paperwork done, came the fun part. So I had to go down to their fertility clinic, which they had already had all my medical records and everything down there. But I still did have to go down there for an actual physical to do just blood work and weight and height and all of that. And they just go over everything with you because you do have to do a full IVF cycle basically. So they go into all the medications, how to administer them, you know, possible side effects. They go over all the risks you're taking, you know, by doing these medications, which again, I would, you know, recommend like take that very seriously and listen when you're in there. You think, oh yeah, easy breezy. And then when you have to inject yourself every day, you're like, man, I wish I would have listened more. um, but it was pretty easy though overall. Like
Yeah.
the fertility clinic was great. I loved working with them. And the fertility clinic is chosen by the couple. So it's typically a clinic they've picked or that they might have frozen embryos at or that they've been treated as a patient themselves.
Perfect.
So yeah, so my clinic was down in San Francisco. And that was like a fun little flight. I would say you do find out like you know, that appointment, what I think you find out a few weeks beforehand about it, and all the flights
Oh,
are
yeah.
covered,
Usually it's
right?
like 2 weeks. We plan it out. Because it's cycle dependent.
Right,
So it depends on usually where you are in your menstrual cycle. And so
right.
notify them of day one. And usually it's like 7 to 10 days later.
Yeah, so it was nice. I was able to plan for that. And part of being a surrogate is they do cover childcare, they cover missed wages, they cover all of your travel reimbursement, food while you're there, and it covers a support person to go with you, which is really nice. You know, you don't want to go do those things by yourself necessarily. And let's see, I don't think Ryan with my husband didn't go to that one with me. He worked, so it
Mm-mm.
was just me, which was nice. It was like a little vacation. um, yeah, so I went down there and I did the appointment by myself. Um, the IPs were not able to come to that appointment with me, which was fine because at that point, like they were basically still strangers. Like we'd only talked a few times. Like once our contracts were signed, we were able to like start texting a little bit, but still, I mean, you're having this baby for someone you've not ever met. And I was by myself. So I was like a little worried. I'm definitely more introverted, and so I was like, oh my god, like I have to meet these people, and I'm having their baby, and so I did my appointments that morning, and I walked around and everything until they could meet. And the wife got stuck at a work meeting, so I met the husband first, and he was just like, "Hey, how's your uterus? Like, how'd the appointment go?" So he broke the ice, and I was so worried about it like being awkward, but it wasn't at all. Like Northwest did a really great job of matching us. I would have to say, like we're just a bunch of awkward, weird, introverted people. So it worked out really well. Um, but it's funny because when you are doing something so like serious, I guess, as having their baby, like you kind of we skipped that whole like, oh, let's slowly get to know each other. Like, how was your day? Look at the weather. Like, we went just straight to the heart of things. Like, you know, how's your uterus? Like, nice to meet you. Like, da 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 da. All these things about pregnancy, and I really appreciated that. So the first day I met them after that appointment, it was wonderful. We had lunch together and they showed me all around the city. We, walked on the piers, obviously, but they showed me a lot of the cool, like non-touristy things. And we ended up walking like 10 miles that day. It was insane. So much walking, but it was so fun. Like just the three of us. And we just really clicked. Um, and I'm actually almost kind of glad it was just me with them and that my husband didn't go. Like it really gave us like kind of that one-on-one. And of course, my husband was involved in this, but ultimately, like it was my body. I was going through with it. They really wanted to get to know me. So we spent the whole day together and then I flew home that night. So it was like a pretty quick trip, or I guess late that next morning, maybe is when it was. Um, but it was really great. It really
Yeah.
was. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, it's fun to think about. I remember when you came back and you told me, you were like, we walked so much. We walked like 10, 13 miles. And I was like, holy cow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Um, and then you moved right into the IVF, which is probably one of the scarier parts, I think, is what most women say, is when they get their box of medication with the needles. My first question for you is, who did your injections? Did you do them yourself or did
Um,
you do them for you?
so I actually wasn't that scared. Being a medical assistant, I have like no fear of needles. And I always would, tell patients, it's fine, it's just a needle. But then when like you're like drawing it up, first it comes to like you have these different medications and they have to be the exact amount on a certain day at the right time. So you're like for an hour beforehand, like, oh God, is it the right med? Is it the right amount? Is it the right temperature? And it wasn't bad at all. Like, although the first one, which is a super tiny needle, it's like an insulin needle that goes in the stomach. I like really like talked myself up, like, okay, you can do this, quit being such a baby. And then I like pushed it so hard in my stomach that it bounced out. Oh God. But then I put it back in and it was so easy. And then after that, my kids actually helped with my stomach ones because
Oh,
it's
that's
such a small
nice.
yeah, it was really fun. And I was really open, like we were very upfront and honest with them the entire time about the entire process. Um, that it was a baby for someone else and explain that, like her body doesn't work right. Like, everybody's different. Like I went into like the whole anatomical talk with them about the uterus and pregnancy. And so I really got into depth with them about it. And so they loved helping me with my injections and they get out the little alcohol swabs and like clean it and blow on it. And so they did the smaller ones in my stomach with my help. But when it was like the bigger needles with the thicker medication, I like did those myself. I was like, there is no way anybody is putting that in because you have to like kind of do it like in your lower back area. And I just was like, someone's gonna like hit my hip bone or my husband will mess it up and not. So you have to like put the needle in and like draw it back a little bit. So no, those were all me. Like I let everyone watch and I still let my kids do the alcohol swabs. And at first they weren't bad. You definitely do get like some soreness and tenderness after. But my clinic was really great when I'd be like, hey, like I have this huge knot right here. What do I do? They were really great about being like, hey, try this, like do some ice or do some heat or, do some squats after you do your injection. Um, so it wasn't as bad. Like I think everyone thinks, oh God, so many needles, so much medication, but it's not as bad. Like you really work it up in your head and then you start doing it and you're like, oh gosh, this is so easy. Like what was I thinking? So yeah, the IVF cycle wasn't bad. There are some side effects. Like I got like sore knees and I started losing hair, which is a side
Huh.
effect of one of them, which lucky for me, I'm like a lion. I have this luscious mane and I I have a lot of hair to spare. So that was fine. Um, other than that, yeah, IVF was pretty easy. It didn't bother me too much.
Yeah. And the embryo transfer, how was that?
It was good. There were a few. So we went like that morning and each for like all the fertility clinics have different guidelines on, what they make their surrogates do. Which brings me up to like the Facebook group. There's the Facebook group for the Northwest Surrogates, which is so helpful and I love it. Like to this day, I'm still constantly on it. But all these different women were like, oh, I had to do bed rest for 48 hours, or I couldn't do this or that, or like no caffeine, no alcohol. So when I got there, I was like, okay, like what are they going to make me do? But my clinic was really easy. Like we went in that day, and my husband did go with me for that one, and Mark and Catherine went too, the parents. So we went in and they took me back to the room first by myself. You have to get in like a full gown and make sure everything's like clean and sterile. And then they brought my husband and the parents in and they check your uterus and make sure everything's right, which is a little awkward because I'm like, okay, I've met this couple once and now they're in here while they're doing like a transvaginal ultrasound. But I mean, if you just don't like really think about it like that, like it's just very medical. It's,
Just preparation for delivery, right?
Exactly. I was like, they're going to see everything anyways. So, but they were really great about it. But then the embryologist came in and they were just like, oh, hey, like your first embryo died when we took it out. So we had to get another one out. And that was really hard. Like that was pretty devastating for them. And here Ryan and I were, who have 3 kids with 0 troubles. Like I felt so bad. And we didn't really know them. Like, and I was obviously laying on the bed and I couldn't like, do you console them? Do you say anything? So
Yeah.
that was hard and that was sad, but like you have to know when you start this like that can happen. Like not everything about surrogacy is like all, rainbows and butterflies. Like this is someone's life and their potential child you're dealing with. So there can be a lot of emotional pitfalls to it. So you just have to be prepared for that. And sometimes you're going to have to be there to support them. And sometimes like they were there to support me. So it really goes both ways. So that part was sad, but then they brought the healthy embryo in and did it. It was easy peasy, like super quick, like 5 minutes max. And it didn't hurt. There was no pain, no discomfort. And the clinic I went to didn't give me any sort of like pain medication or anything beforehand. I know some clinics do Valium beforehand. My clinic didn't, which was nice. And they also didn't do any bed rest. We had, which was amazing. I just laid on the table for about 15 minutes and then they're like, okay, you're good to go. Like, go have a great day. And I was like, okay, like, I really don't need to like lay in a bed. And what the doctor tell me, he said, your uterus is like cream cheese on a bagel. It's very sticky. Once it's in there, it's just going to stick.
It's the best
I
image
was like,
I've had of
except for I love like cream cheese and bagels. So I was like, thanks. Like, thanks for that one. Um, so so then we all spent the day together again, which was really nice. It was the first time the couple had met Ryan. And again, we just walked around San Francisco and they showed us all the sights and we hung out. And obviously, they were very nervous. And right after we left, they're like, hey, let's go get some coffee. And it was when all the fires were really bad down there. So they like asked me to wear a face mask. And I was like, okay, like it's fine. Just because of the smoke inhalation, they didn't want it to like potentially trigger some sort of like autoimmune issue that could cause the embryo to not take. I was like, you know what? This
Yeah.
is their baby. Like, I'm gonna do whatever they want. Like, it's just a face mask. And then we went and got coffee, and they're like, oh wait, like when do you have to stop drinking coffee? Like, it was really cute. Like, all of a sudden, it was like, oh my gosh, like this is happening. Like, she could be pregnant with our baby. So we just hung out all day, and it was really fun. And we went to Chinatown and all kinds of cool places. We had some really great dinner with them. But I could tell like the whole time they were pretty like nervous. And so I just was very like at that point, like I was their rock. Like, hey, this is gonna work. Like, my husband can look at me and I'm pregnant. Like, there's no way this isn't gonna work. Like, and I told him, you can be pessimist, you can be like doubtful, like I will be the positive one for all of us. Which they later said like they really appreciated because it was so hard. So many of these couples needing surrogates have tried for years and years, or they all have a different story, but you have to think like they're coming into it from a bad point, whereas like I was coming into it from a really good, happy, excited point. So we had to really find like that middle ground. Whereas like I just didn't want to be like, oh, it's fine, like don't worry, don't stress. Like of course they're going to stress and worry. Like everything about trying to have a child for them has been kind of a bad experience. Um, so we flew home the next day. I did have to stay in the city for 24 hours before flying. So we really got a couple days together, which was really nice because San Francisco is not that far from Bend, but they were far enough away that we knew we wouldn't get a lot of like FaceTime with them in person. So it was really nice to have a few days. And then the waiting, I think I started taking like home pregnancy tests at like 3 days, which is so silly. And they like didn't even, I was like, do you guys want me to tell you I'm taking them? And so the husband was like, no, I don't want to know. Like, we'll wait till the blood test. And the wife was like, yeah, I want to know everything. Like, just tell me. So by like, but by day 4, like I started getting very faint positives, which was surprising. Like it happened that quick. Um, so she was like starting to be hopeful, but was like, well, the line's not very dark. And I was like, well, that doesn't matter. Like if there's a line, there's a line. But he still was like, nope, like I'm not believing it. I'm not even getting my hopes up. I was like, okay, like I'm still gonna be the positive one. Like it's there, the baby's growing, it's gonna work. And then at about 10 days, I think it is, you go in for blood work, right, Jordyn? Is it
Yeah,
10
like
days?
around
Yeah.
9 or 10 days usually.
Yeah, so you go in for what's called a beta draw, and it just tests like your hormone levels. And mine were good. They were above where they should be. So at that point, like me and the mother were super excited, like celebrating, like, yes, it took. And I was like, yes, I told you so. But Mark was still like, nope, like I'm waiting for the ultrasound to believe it. And so I was like, dang it, like just be excited. So then after a few more days, I got the second blood work and it had doubled, which it's supposed to do. So that was very reassuring for them. And then at around 6 weeks, you go in for the heartbeat ultrasound, which they weren't able to come for, unfortunately. But obviously, there was a heartbeat, and I really wanted to record it, but they don't let you record it. But I did get, all the little pictures, and I got a disc with everything on it and sent it to so at that point it was like, oh my God, like it worked, like first try, which isn't always the case. I've learned through the Facebook group that some surrogates do go through like 1 and 2 and 3 IVF cycles. Like it's not, I was very lucky. Like we were all very lucky that it worked so well. Like the first try it worked, everything went very smoothly, but you do have to understand that that's not the case. And so if you're thinking of being a surrogate and you're going into it wanting to do it, like always seriously consider that it could be a lot harder than you anticipate. It could also be a lot easier than you anticipate. But you just really want to like understand it could go either way. And that helps you mentally prepare and prepare your body. But then also to be able to deal with these other people that you're having a baby for. Like it's all of a sudden not just you being pregnant. So we were very lucky and very thankful. They were very shocked. They were like dead set it would not work the first time. Like, so, which kind of made it even more amazing when it worked, where I was like, yes, it did. Like it's gonna happen. Um, and so at that point, we started texting more. Like our relationship kind of changed at that point, where they could finally like let their breath out and relax and really look forward to like pregnancy. But even going into that, I have been through it 3 times. It was very easy for me. I knew what to expect. They didn't. And obviously, like when someone else is carrying your baby, that's nerve-wracking. But they were really great. They trusted me 100%. They never like pushed anything on me. We were a really good team. It was a lot of give and take. We had great communication. They trusted me to make the right decisions with my body for their baby. I listened to everything they wanted, which I do get the question a lot, like, oh, what'd they make you do? Do you have to eat weird stuff? And no, when they match you, they do make sure, if like someone wants a vegan surrogate, that you're a vegan surrogate, and they didn't ask me to eat anything weird or drink anything weird. I was on a lot of vitamins. They sent me like, I don't know, 15 vitamins a day I was taking, which was fine. I was like, sure, all the more vitamins, that's a good thing. But that's the weirdest probably thing they asked of me. There was no micromanaging. There was no texting every day, which I had, when I started the match process, I said the only thing I don't want is to be micromanaged. Like I've been pregnant 3 times. I know how to do it. Obviously, I can do it well. I don't want someone texting me every day or saying like, "Hey, why are you riding a bike? Like maybe you shouldn't go jogging, or are you sure you should be swimming?" Um, and they weren't like that at all. They were wonderful, which was great. And so let's see, they came. We did the 6 week like heartbeat confirmation to confirm pregnancy, and then they came later at like 10 weeks for my first appointment with the OB, which as a surrogate you get to pick your own OB. At that point it's almost like your own pregnancy, whereas like you get to pick the doctor, you get to pick where you want to go. Like they don't really have much of a say in that. I mean, hopefully you do work well and you choose that person together. And I let them know what doctor I wanted to go to, and they researched it and looked her up and everything. So we both decided together, like, yes, this doctor sounds like a great fit. She really seems to know what she's doing. So they came to that first appointment with her. Uh, and then we found out the doctor had to do IVF herself. So that was even, more special that she knew what these parents were going through. Um, and they did the ultrasound there where they actually got to hear the heartbeat. And I told them, I was like, you'll hear it. It's going to sound like a normal heartbeat. You'll be able to see the baby moving at this point. And they were like, no, you can't. Like, it's like 10 weeks. And I was like, seriously, it's going to look like a little jelly bean jumping around in there. and and they just were like, no, 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 like that's not going to happen. And then it did. And like just the awe on their faces, and they had their phones out and they were recording it, obviously crying. That was like, I think when it really, really hit them, like, this is our baby, like, this is our child. And so that was really cool. That was
Yeah.
really cool. Yeah.
That's always one of the best moments, I think, when intended parents get to see the images for themselves or hear the heartbeat. It's always like,
Mm-hmm.
you're giving me goosebumps. Thank you.
Yeah,
Perfect.
it was really cool. And then let's see, I want to say that was like around January. Oh no, that was earlier than that. That was in the fall. But and then they were able to come back for the 5-month like fetal and anatomy scan, and they wanted to find out the sex of the baby, which was really weird for me because I didn't with any of my kids. And so I was like, man, it's gonna like be weird like to know what's growing inside of me this time. Um, and it ended up being a girl, and so we went in and they both got to go into that appointment with me, which was really awesome. And so as soon as like we were all trying to guess, like, oh, what is it? What do you think it's gonna be? I thought it would be a boy, so did they. Which is funny because with my own kids, I never found out the gender, but I knew right away what they all were. And I was obviously way off with this one. She was a girl, not a boy. But that was really cool. They were like completely mesmerized by like, oh my God, like you can see her spine, like you can see her face. Look at those fingers, look at the feet. Neither of them had ever seen like a fetal ultrasound. And so it was really cool. Like, I mean, I was growing the baby and she was inside of me, but it was so cool to watch them see all of this for the first time. It's like a kid on
Yeah.
Christmas. Like it was
Yeah.
just so amazing. So
And then,
special.
yeah, it's crazy. And then that's right about, I think, because you delivered,
In July
yeah.
23rd.
Oh, so yeah. So that was probably around right before COVID happened. And
Yeah. Yeah, I want to say that was like in February maybe.
I
And they
think
had planned to come a few more times during the pregnancy just to hang out and get to know Bend and decide where they wanted to stay before delivery. But yeah, then COVID hit and all of that became a big pipe dream. So they weren't able to come again. I'm a stay-at-home mom, but I did daycare. And so they didn't want me doing daycare anymore because of the risk of, dirty little kids running around with germs. And so we talked about it, and I said, if that's what would make you comfortable, then I won't work anymore. They do pay missed wages. It's just like if you have to miss work for an appointment. So I wasn't able to work at all. And I had to be extremely careful. Like I didn't really go out a lot. My husband did all the shopping. And this was kind of one of those things like in the contract, all that's covered, if this and this and this happens. And I was like, well, that'll never happen. And then all of a sudden, like it was happening. Um, and so at that point though, they still really trusted me, which was really nice. And I actually got really sick at the beginning of the year. I got like a horrible sinus infection and a ruptured eardrum and a cold and all this stuff. And they were so great. They like ordered me like soup every day and like Thai food and had it delivered to my house. So I was like really worried they would be worried about what I was doing, but they weren't. Like they said, we trust you completely. Like we know you'll do the right thing. Um, but it was hard, like being at home all the time, all of a sudden, like I wasn't working.
sure.
But like going into it, like I knew like there would potentially be sacrifices I had to make. Also, one of my kids, my daughter is like immunocompromised, so we would have had to be super strict about things anyways. So I guess it worked out. Like I was helping,
Positive spin on it. I like.
positive spin on it. Yeah. Yeah. So it really wasn't
Yeah.
too bad, but even though like it wasn't my baby, like I wasn't preparing for a baby and I wouldn't have been having a baby shower, all that fun stuff, like all of a sudden, like I was going through this whole pregnancy and nobody knew, like nobody saw me, nobody saw my belly growing. Like our monthly meetups with surrogates, like were canceled. So we couldn't do anything together. And then I was like, oh, like all this fun, exciting, like getting a belly and going out, like all that was gone. I didn't even have to buy cute maternity clothes because I was at home all the time. But that's all
How
right.
was delivery affected? You mentioned a little bit you weren't sure at first if they were going to be able to make it or be in the room.
Yeah, so the hospital had restrictions for a really long time that only one person was allowed in the room. So I was going to have to pick between one of the parents, my husband, or the doula, which I got a doula, which is actually covered in the contract, which is really nice. And I had never had one before, but I thought it would be so amazing to have someone there who knows pregnancy, knows what I want, and she could be a really good go-between for these parents who have no idea what childbirth is like. So then all of a sudden, like having all these people to choose from was horrible. And I had decided like I will 100% for sure have the mom in there with me. Like this is their baby, but like the mom needs to be there, whether it's COVID or a C-section or an emergency, like she will be there, which was really hard to pick, between like her or like my husband. But that's what we decided would be best. And we got really lucky. Like a few weeks before delivery, they said they would allow both parents in and then one support person for me. So I stuck with having the doula there, and my husband stayed home with the kids. But even like with the guidelines and restrictions changing, like every day they were on the phone with the hospital caseworker, like, hey, what are your guidelines today? What are your restrictions? Can we both still be there? So up until like delivery, we really didn't know who they would let in. Um, and I started to go into labor kind of on a Friday, like in and out of contractions. It was really funny. I texted him like, hey, I'm having contractions. I'm just gonna like hop in the bath for a little bit. I'll let you know. So I was like in the bath and I just hear my dog. I have like this 80-pound shepherd like start losing it. So I'm like, oh my God, what is going on? I wrap up in a towel and run out there and they came over to my house. They had rented an Airbnb for the whole month of July because I was due in the middle of July. And they just came in, and so my dog was like had him cornered in the front door, and I was like, oh my God, like I'm in this tiny little towel, like close your eyes. But then I was like, you're gonna see more than this in a few days, so just come on in. But yeah, so I was in and out of labor all through the weekend, and they were getting really worried that something was wrong. But I tried to explain like, hey, it's perfectly normal. And she was still worried though. So on Monday, I went in to see the OB just to get checked, and my water broke in the doctor's office. So I was like, okay, here's like, we're going in, this is happening. So I went in by myself and got all checked in, got situated, had the doula come, had to follow all the guidelines. I had to get like tested for COVID before anybody could come. And then they came, and then it was a horrible, long, really unexpected labor. Like all of mine were super fast, like one or two pushes and the baby was out. And so we all kind of went into like, oh, this will be so fast and so easy. And it wasn't. Like I have a new appreciation for like women who have hard labors. It was like right at 4 hours of like active pushing. And I was like one of those crazy ladies screaming at the doctors. But she came out in the wrong position. Like she was face up instead of face down. But I didn't need a C-section or anything, which was amazing because that was like, they didn't want one. I didn't want one. My doula obviously didn't want one. I was like so mad. But as soon as she like popped out, it was so amazing. Like they were both there. Like the mom took turns like holding my leg and the nurse and everyone just worked really well as a team. But it was nice to have the doula there, so I wasn't like worried about them. Like I could just focus on like, okay, let's do this. But when she came out, like they just both were tears, just like, oh my God, she's here. It's a baby. Like she's breathing and crying, and they put her on my chest right away because we wanted to do delayed cord clamping. So I held her. I was not even looking at the baby. I was like staring at them, just watching them like cry and bawl, and like I was crying, and I'm not even a crier. But me and the mom, she was like rubbing her head, and I was like telling them congratulations, and they were talking to the baby, and the doula was like trying to take pictures. But it was so special. Like I can't even, like, it's one of those things you can't really ever describe to somebody. Like it was better than having my own kids, which sounds horrible because obviously having your own child is like the best moment of your life. It was like that, but for someone else. Like it was just the absolute coolest thing. And they stayed in my room all day with the baby, which was really funny watching them as like first time parents, which I'm sure all like I probably did the same things with my first kid, but like they didn't know how to change a diaper and I didn't know how to swaddle. And so they were doing like the really awkward like hold where she was like sliding down their chest and but I didn't want to like step on their shoes of like, hey, you should do this, you should do that. But they, you know, they asked for advice and I got to hold her and we rested all day, which was awesome. But because of COVID, they're not allowed like to stay in the room with me. They had to go at our hospital, they send them to the NICU and only one of them could stay the night with the baby, which was a bummer. So they were in a separate room, but we had the same nurse, like they kept the same nurse for the baby and for me. So we had a really good go between because we had decided ahead of time that I would pump for them. So I would like hand express colostrum the whole time and she would take it down to the NICU. And it was really great. We were both out within like 24 hours uh, and both healthy and doing really well. So it was so awesome. I know I keep saying that, but it really was like it was just
Yeah.
the and I got to come home and sleep all night. Well, not at, not at first because I was pumping, so I had to get up and pump. I like to come home and not have a newborn was so awesome.
Best nap ever. That's what I
Yeah,
always say after
pretty
delivery.
much. Yeah. Yeah. Best nap ever. Um,
Awesome.
and I had gotten a puppy, you know, like a month before delivery as like my baby replacement. So that was, you know, I came home and snuggled my kids and snuggled my puppy and it was so awesome. And they stayed for a couple weeks after delivery and I pumped for them. We were pretty like distant because of COVID, which was a bummer. Like I really wanted a lot of like snuggle time and my kids wanted to hold her and we didn't get to do any of that, which I completely understand. Like no hard
Yeah.
feelings. Um, and then they went home, but that's all right.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. That's perfect. We've got a couple of questions from the audience, if you're
Yeah,
ready. The
I'm
first one
ready.
is, do you remember how long it took for your medical records to get approved?
Mine were really fast. I think it helped that I knew all of my doctors. I had all their information. I didn't need to like look anything up. So it only took me like a day to get all my forms filled out. And within a couple weeks, they had been cleared by your guys' fertility clinic. And Krista was super shocked. She was like, oh my gosh, that happens so fast. Like it usually never happens that fast. I know, I think it's probably like a month or two typical.
Yeah,
It's a
that's
little
about right.
longer.
Yeah.
It just depends on like how fast the surrogate fills out the paperwork, but mostly like doctor's offices can take a long time to get your entire medical record released. So I would definitely plan for like a month or two for that.
Cool.
Um,
Perfect. Do you remember how long it took after you were like officially ready to be matched until you saw the profile for the first time? It's probably a hard
that,
question.
yeah, it was only like a few weeks. Like once
Mhm.
we had gotten completely cleared, you know, we did the psych evaluation and the home visit, which is just a case. Is it someone who works for you guys, the caseworker that
No,
just
it's a
comes to your
social, it's
house?
an independent social worker.
Okay. So yeah, just came to the house, like checked everything to make sure it's safe, you know, no smoking, no drugs, probably no guns. Just a
Yeah.
safe environment to be pregnant. And then after like getting cleared by all of that, it was just a few weeks. Like we got the heads up like, hey, you we'll be bringing your profile to our next meeting this week and we have, you know, some potential people we think you'd be great with. So it was only a few weeks. It went pretty
Yeah.
quick. Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Do you still keep in touch with their, I guess they're not intended parents anymore, they're parents. Do you
Right, parents.
with them?
I do, yes. Partly I am pumping for them still. So obviously we have to keep in contact and that's super easy. I pump and freeze it and they, you know, we get paid to pump. We get a reimbursement for that and then they pay for all the shipping and supplies. But yeah, we, even aside from that, I think we would still talk. They send me pictures every few days and ask how I'm doing. Like it's not just one-sided. It's not all about their baby and how she's doing and how they are. Like they always ask how I'm doing, how the kids are doing, like, you know, things like that. So yeah, we actually built a pretty good relationship.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Do you know what happened to the first embryo? Is it common, if you know, that the first embryo doesn't make it out of the thaw? If you don't know, I know the answer to that if you don't.
The doctor told us that it's not like uncommon that it happens, and that it can be for a lot of reasons. It could be when they're first frozen, it could be when they're thawed, it could be, that when they took the cell sample after the embryo was formed, that something like that could have harmed it. So I don't know. Do you know something else, Jordyn?
No, that's actually a really good answer. It's probably better than
Yeah.
I was going to say. I would say it's not, it's not, like you said, it's not uncommon, but it's definitely not common. I wouldn't say it doesn't happen very often. I would say it's pretty, yeah, I wouldn't say it's,
Yeah, I think it seems to be more common that the embryo doesn't take after the transfer, not that an embryo wasn't like alive when it thawed. That seems to be
correct.
the stories I hear more from other surrogates.
Yep, that's a good way to do the comparisons. How old are your kiddos now, I guess?
3.5, 6, and 8.
Yeah. Oh
So
my God.
I have a boy, a girl, and a boy.
It's crazy. And how are they doing with the puppy? Are they helping clean up all the poo and
Oh yeah, they do great. They love her.
that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Oh yeah. And we have a bigger dog too. So I'm like, go outside and clean all that up.
That's awesome. Were you also an egg donor or just?
I was not. So they're kind of two completely different processes. And I think being an egg donor is probably harder. Like I looked into it when I was younger. The guidelines are a lot stricter. And the medical history, like you have to know stuff about like great great grandparents, like second and third cousins. It's really in depth. And they have an age cutoff, I think, of like 28 typically. Whereas like surrogacy, a lot of fertility clinics go up to like 42 because it's not your genetics. So I was not an egg donor. But also surrogacy, they don't use your eggs at all. It's either they, like the couple might have to get an egg and sperm donor, or it's theirs. In my case, it was their embryo from both of them, but it would never be a surrogate.
Yeah, yeah, perfect. We talked a little bit about this, but how would you say COVID impacted your pregnancy and delivery? What are some?
I think it just took away a lot of like the fun and excitement. Like they wanted to come more and hang out, and we didn't get to do that, and then after delivery, just not really getting to have a lot of hands-on time and getting to snuggle the baby and hang out. We had to be super careful. So it just took all of that away. And some of my friends wanted to do they call it a nacho baby party where it's like nacho themed.
That's
So
amazing.
I know.
I've
So
never
instead
heard
of,
of that.
yeah, a nacho baby shower. So because obviously I don't need a baby shower, but people want to pamper surrogates and get you spa stuff or robes or things you would need after delivery, whether you have a baby or not. So I didn't get to do any of that fun stuff. A couple other local surrogates here in our group were due like within a week or two of me. And in the beginning, we were so excited. And then all of a sudden, it wasn't even safe to be around each other. So I would say that
Yeah,
was like the biggest, like it really took a lot of the excitement out of it.
yeah, that's really hard.
Yeah.
Also, you didn't get to eat your nachos, which is
I
just
know. And
in
I love
general.
nachos. Good.
Me too. This is a really good question. What advice would you give to nervous parents who don't want to be overbearing?
Like
Um,
expected parents
intended
or
parents to intended
intent.
parents. Yeah. They're just nervous.
Um,
They want to know how you're doing. They want to know how the baby's doing, but they also don't want to text you every 5 minutes. What would you
I
say?
think to match accordingly. So when you go into the process of finding a surrogate, they do talk about what you expect for communication or what you would like. And some surrogates honestly would love to FaceTime every day and love to text every day and talk nonstop. I didn't want that because I have 3 children and was doing daycare and I have an art business. So like I said, match accordingly and do not feel bad about telling a surrogate no. Like if you're gonna be the parents, like just say no. I don't feel like that surrogate's the one for us. And if you want to be the crazy overbearing, like, stressed out parents, then do it. Like it's your kid. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it, but also it's probably going to work out and have a really happy ending. So don't stress too much. Enjoy the process, you know?
Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
funny. Emotionally, was it hard delivering the baby and handing her over to her parents?
No, not at all. No, and for a lot of different reasons, you do go into, like I said in the beginning, I started it pretty early because I was still nursing. So I had like 2 years to mentally prepare for this, that this isn't my baby and she's not. Like people will be like, oh, you're giving your baby away, but she was never mine to give. Like I was just giving her back. That's their baby. And so you have the whole approval process time to prepare for this, and then the entire pregnancy. And then like just getting to see that couple with their baby took away any fear of like, okay, I could be sad. Like just watching them, like, and I got to come home to my own kids. And
And
I was done having children. After my last child, I had a tubal done. So I have no desire to have more children. And I think that helped. If I was a surrogate, and some surrogates do have a baby in between their own child, I think it would be harder if you still had that desire for your own child, but I didn't. Like we have three and I'm done and I'm happy and our family's complete. And so I was just so excited to help like someone else start their family that it took away any like emotional. The only thing that hit me is what my best friend is. She just had her baby and I threw her baby shower a couple months after delivery. And so when I was like there, I was like, oh, I missed all of this. Like I missed my nacho baby party. And that was kind of,
I will throw you a nacho baby party.
yes, like
When
that,
we can meet in person, we'll go up
yeah,
into bed and we'll eat some nachos.
yeah, yeah. So that was the only time it really hit me like, man, like you missed out on all of this and you don't have a baby, but another one of my local friends had a baby. So I get all these other babies to snuggle and I get to sleep all night.
Yeah. Positive. How did you decide with the intended parents who would hold the child first? There's complete different opinions on, the cord clamping, and what was that thought?
Yeah, I think it would depend on what the parents wanted for cord clamping. And ultimately, the delivery is yours as a surrogate. If you don't want the parents in that room, you can tell them to get out or tell them that they're not allowed to be there at all. We all agreed that I wanted them there. He was going to cut the cord, but because it was delayed cord clamping, I had to hold her first. Like the umbilical cord's only so long. So I held her first. If it was where they cut the cord right away, it would be between the couple who held the baby first. But they don't, like, the surrogate doesn't typically do like a lot of skin on skin. Some families want the surrogate to nurse, whereas I didn't. I was strictly going to be pumping. So really it's so individualized. And that's, again, I fall back to like the matching, like make sure you're matched with someone and talk about all these things potentially in the match meeting. Like make sure, if you don't want them there, get matched with a couple who's okay not being there for the birth of their child.
Mm-hmm.
And so plan it together and work together as a team.
And you do work together towards like the end of the pregnancy. You come together and make the birth plan usually.
Right. Yeah. So I want to say like 6 weeks before delivery, the lawyers get involved again and they go over whole birth plan. They go over signing of the birth certificate, who picks the name, how it's done. And different states do it differently. But like in Oregon, I delivered, so I'm legally the mother. So you have to do some things with that. So you do get to go all over all of it, later along in pregnancy. And it's all written down, like it's all on paper. It's all legally binding. So it's not like they can just throw you under the bus as soon as their baby comes. And hopefully that would never happen because you would love the parents. Yeah.
Perfect.
So we did all of that as a team.
Yeah. Do you remember how long it took from being medically cleared by your fertility clinic to the first transfer?
Oh, that was a while. So you get medically cleared twice. Like the Northwest Fertility Clinic gets all your medical records,
No,
right?
I'm talking about the California clinic. After your appointment in person to the transfer, I think it was
like 6 weeks.
Yeah, I think it was like to the transfer is probably like two months, I think, usually.
Yeah. So you, after that like initial first appointment at the fertility clinic, they go over all your meds, like your menstrual cycle, you start like birth control and things like that. So it can take a little while. And I think every woman is different depending on when your cycle starts, but mine was around 2 months, like 7 weeks probably. And in that time period, you have a couple appointments. Once you start your medication, you have to go get your uterus checked to make sure the lining is right and the ovulation is being controlled right. So there's a little wiggle room. Like it really is individualized and extremely tailored to that surrogate, but I would expect, you know, between like 7 to 9 weeks probably.
Perfect. Would you do anything differently if you look back on it now?
No. No, I mean, I would take away COVID, but if I
Other
could do
than having a
something,
nacho
right,
baby party.
I would have a nacho baby party. No, it's worked out so well. Yeah, no, I wouldn't do anything different. I wouldn't like take anything back. I wouldn't match with a different couple. Mm-mm.
Perfect. Did you have any difficulty going right to pumping?
No, and luckily I'm like a milk cow. So I'm a major overproducer, and so I actually started. My doctor gave me the go ahead about a week before I was due to start hand expressing colostrum. So I was able to do that and get a bunch of vials frozen. And when I went in for delivery, I took them with me. So they were there and they were ready, and the nurses had them all prepped. So we had a little stockpile before I even delivered. And then I brought my pump to the hospital and just right away started pumping. There are some pumping groups exclusively for surrogates on Facebook, which have been so helpful because I've learned there's a big difference between like breastfeeding and pumping a little bit to like exclusively pumping. There's a lot to learn and there's a learning curve and it's a little bit more painful. Um, but it's been pretty easy. I mean, it's time consuming. Like definitely consider that if they want you to pump, that it could take a good 4 hours out of your day. And you are reimbursed for it, so that's a plus, but don't feel like you have to do it either. But I enjoy doing it. You know, I helped grow this baby. The most I could do is help feed her, you know.
Yeah.
And it's better for me too, health wise. It's better to nurse afterwards or pump anyways.
Perfect. And this is going to be our last question, which is kind of fitting. Would you consider being a surrogate again?
Yes. So actually, I don't know if you remember, but at our match meeting, I asked them like,
I
do
do
you guys want
remember.
one kid or do you want more? And they had said like, no, you know, they had 5 frozen embryos and they would want a sibling. So very early in the process, we knew that if everything went well, I would be doing it again for them. And so obviously everything went well and we have this beautiful baby girl. And so, yeah, we'll be doing a sibling journey. I do have to do the approval process all over again. So you have to do, you know, medical record clearance because a lot could change in someone's health in that time period. The psych eval, the home visit, all of it, which I imagine all clear. And then, yeah, so we will hopefully start that this coming summer, which I think they let you do it up like as soon as 6 months after delivery, but they want to time it about 2 years apart. So I'll start the process this summer, and then hopefully by next summer, I'll be pregnant again.
It's crazy to think about.
I know. I'm so excited though.
No, I'm
Like
excited.
already.
I'm
I know.
excited
And
for
this,
round 2 too.
right? We're
And
gonna
we
have
can.
a double
And
nacho party.
I was just gonna say, we'll make sure we'll have the nacho party for sure. Perfect. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you so much, Sarah. You're over here.
Yes, thank you.
I did that. It was so nice to see you again. If anyone who's attending has any questions for Northwest Surrogacy Center, just feel free to reach out. The email you can reach out to is info@northwestsurrogacycenter.com. We look forward to hearing from you all in the future, and have a good rest of your night.
Yeah. Good night, everybody.
Night. Bye, Sarah.
Bye.